Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Madness Cafe. Today, Jennifer and I are joined by Dana Diaz. And Dana is a wife, mother, and author of the best-selling book, Gasping for Air, The Stranglehold of Narcissistic Abuse. Dana has had lifelong experience with narcissistic abuse beginning in childhood. Her education in journalism and psychology at DePaul University in Chicago gave her the ability to accurately verbalize and express how narcissistic abuse creates confusion and conflict within victims so that she can help other victims know they are not alone and better understand their own circumstances. Her first book, Gasping for Air, chronicles her own abusive marriage that lasted nearly 3 decades, started as a journal that she hid under the couch cushion in the basement. Now, thankfully, Dana is living happily in Illinois and is in the process of publishing the prequel and sequel to Gasping for Air. Dana, thank you so much for being with us today. We're so excited to talk to you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be here. And thank you for having my book sitting behind you. I mean, it's kind of a narcissistic thing to say, but I like seeing it.
No, it's awesome.
It does have a cool cover. Oh, she's got it tabbed
really
and
does.
everything.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
Mine's on e-reader, so.
Okay.
But just so people know, it is available on e-reader.
Yes.
So for people who don't have room for a lot of books or just prefer to carry it with, it's on ebook too. So.
Well,
Yes.
Raquel and I love to read, so we were happy to read it. And oh my gosh, what a book.
Yes. So good.
Well, thank you. I never know what to say to that, though. So I just say thank you because it's, for those who don't know, it was my experience in my former marriage, or I should say a multitude of experiences. There are still some that there was just no more room in the book. They were already anxious about how many pages the book already was. So there's still more stories to tell, but boy, was it a ride.
Indeed.
So tell us a little bit about you, specifically your childhood growing up, and then how did you come to write this book about narcissistic abuse?
Sure. So the prequel that I'm actually just finishing up a little bit here and there this week is actually going to tell all about that childhood, because the big question has been, how does a girl like you end up in a situation like that? Because immediately people go to, oh, she wasn't strong, she must have been weak. And no, not so much, but that's what narcissists go for. They feel so empowered when they can conquer somebody that is strong-minded and educated and seemingly more than who they think they are. So this childhood, I'll give a little sprinkle on top of the cupcake that will be the book. So I was born to a mother who was a teenager when she became pregnant with me. She was not excited about this. I understand it wasn't the best circumstances, but I mean, she never hesitated to remind me that I wasn't wanted, that I was a mistake, that I was an accident, all these things, and that she wished she could have aborted me.
I'm sorry about that.
She did not. That's okay. I mean, it's taken a long time, and I'm laughing, but years and years of therapy, but I'm glad I can laugh about it now because it's a horrible thing. Like I always say, like even serial killers and axe murderers have moms sitting behind them in court after the things they've done. And I was like that overachieving child, that people pleaser. Like I just wanted that approval, honor roll, and first chair in 2 different orchestras, and best at everything. I mean, every award, I was eager to do something that would win some approval or affection, but that wasn't the case. But, to express what kind of people say, well, maybe you were set, because my mother always said, maybe you're sensitive. And, I'm Gen X, we're supposed to be tough. And like, we kind of raised ourselves. Yeah, but like my mom really didn't want children. I mean, she was 17. I was born on her 17th birthday, irony. And she had her tubes tied immediately after my birth. So I really don't think she wanted kids. I was cramping her style. So where this went really wrong for me, though, aside from her emotional and physical distance from me my entire life, she married a man that, ooh, king of all narcissists. Only I was a kid, so I didn't know what a narcissist was. But this is one that people typically associate narcissism with somebody like this, that brags about everything they have and tells you how great they are. And
Mm,
they've got the car, the expensive car, and the big house that is ridiculous for them to have, and the name brand clothes and the watch, and the, if the neighbor gets a TV, they have one that's bigger, and they always got to one up every, you know what I mean?
all the
This was what I
trappings.
grew up with. Yeah, it was annoying to say the least. But where this goes wrong for me as a child, and to explain to people that don't understand narcissism, the extent to which these people go to fulfill their ego, I truly believe they're often jealous of their, like, if you guys read my book, Gasping for Air, my ex-husband, when we had that baby, boy, did things go south because my
Mm,
attention was on the baby and not on him. They don't like kids for that reason. They'll still coach
wow.
little league and do all the right things, and they're great with everyone's kids, but boy, if one becomes more important than them, well, I was that little girl. My mom, I was that extra baggage. So when she got married to this guy, he didn't like that she had to divide her attention between the two of us. It was almost a game of cat and mouse with him, where, I mean, I was verbally and physically abused. I feel like the gist of it was based on this idea that he had to be more important to her than I was.
Mm.
And it
Mm,
became this thing where, well, you're not even part of this family because you're not my biological child, therefore you're not worthy. And it was, you were never supposed to be here. You shouldn't even exist. Nobody's ever going to love you. But my mother, unfortunately, because she didn't have any connection with me, she kind of, we'll say, went to the dark side, and it was the two of them against me. Yet I was a little kid, but it was very clear. And eventually it was so insulting to him that he was raising, as he called it, another man's child, that he wanted his own. And this became, and this will be a theme in my prequel, that he had to have his own biological child because I wasn't apparently sufficient. He had to have his own. So they went on years long, experience for my mother to have the tubal ligation reversed so that she could eventually, and they did. I was what, 14 when they
Oh,
had their
wow.
own child, and I was told that I was not a part of their family. They were a
I'm so
family and I
sorry.
was there, and I should just be happy I was being fed, clothed, and sheltered. And food was, here's $50 a week. Fend for yourself. Yeah, it just kind of sucked, but you have to think about, so when people say, like, oh, maybe you were weak and all this, going into this situation, into my first marriage, it wasn't so much that. People just have to understand how much verbal abuse I endured, and that as much, because I was a tenacious little thing, as much as I stood up for myself and said, you don't get to say that to me. And, I wasn't stupid. I looked at my friends' parents. They didn't treat them like that. I looked at even some of my family members. I noticed family systems, and I was clearly the scapegoat. I was clearly not supposed to be anything more than what they thought I was, which was nothing. And it really affected me, that as much as I stood up against it, as much as I stood up for myself, as much as I said the words, even in my mind to myself, that, "Oh, don't listen to him. Don't let him make you think that." I mean, after that many years, my entire childhood, I've internalized it. So I
Mm,
really didn't think I was much of anything. This is what narcissists do. They make you question yourself, doubt
mhm.
reality. So I had a hard time connecting with people. Even just with friends. So it was really difficult leaving their house, like, oh, I'm never going to let anyone mistreat me like that again. And then I fall for this guy who immediately, when I met him, I mean, that's the opening of
Mhm.
Gasping for Air, is when I met him. And I immediately was like, no, he was aloof. He was ignorant. I was like, no, I don't know who you are, but I'm
Mhm.
good.
Yeah,
I'm good.
on page one, you say, first you say, for I was only 7. You were 7 years old, and you say, I couldn't understand why my mother chose to stay with him, nor why she allowed him to put a divide between us. All I knew was I'd never allow a man to wield that kind of power over me. And that was page 1. Powerful
Yeah.
stuff.
And then I did.
Right.
And I'm going to
Yeah.
tell you why. Is
Mhm.
because my ex was a different type of narcissist. He's what you call a covert narcissist. So a covert narcissist, you're going to have a love-hate relationship with.
Okay.
My stepfather, overt. He just hated me. That
Yeah.
was it. That was our relationship. But the covert narcissist loves you sometimes and treats you really good sometimes. We laughed. We had some amazing times together. But when they hate you, if you say or do something, boy, if you look at them the wrong way, if they don't get something they want, your life becomes a living hell. And that's when you have that switch, that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde factor.
Mhm.
So for me, unfortunately, because of the childhood I came out of, where it was hate, 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 as much as I didn't like it, and as much as I didn't want it to be that way, he did love me sometimes, or at least made the appearance of loving me. And that
Right.
was enough for me. If I had grown up, if I had been raised in a home with 2 parents who loved me, gave me some sense of self-esteem, even just a tiny bit, oh, believe me, there's no way he'd have gotten away with after that first night, after the first time he spewed beer at me. No,
Yeah.
I'm good. That's disrespectful. I'm out. I would have never tolerated that. But because it was better, it was enough. And I just honestly felt so unworthy and so undeserving because of how stepfather had basically, hijacked my brain, think that way, that anybody else would love me any differently or any better. And maybe I didn't deserve that. It's awful.
Mm. One thing that I'm thinking of when you talk about narcissists and them thinking very highly of themselves, right? I wonder, because we all
Yes.
know people who are egotistical, think they're the best thing since sliced bread, whatever, think they're the smartest, whatever. What is the difference between somebody being egotistical and full of themselves and someone being a narcissist, and specifically an abusive narcissist?
There is a big difference actually within all of that. So, simple explanation here. On the one hand, let's start with narcissism. There are different types of narcissists. Depends who you ask how many there are, but it's definitely a spectrum. But I always tell people one end of the spectrum, you have just a regular narcissist. I liken it to tumors. Like you can have a benign tumor, it's not going to bother you, it's just there. Those are the people on social media with the abs and the lashes and taking pictures in bikinis. They look amazing. Like you can't even hate on them because you're like, yeah, if I looked like that, I'd probably be doing the same thing. And this is where narcissist comes from, the word. The Greek god Narcissus liked to look at his reflection in the water because he was just so in love with the way he looked. So are they harming anyone? They might annoy you once in a while just because they are that hot, but they're not bothering anybody. But then
Okay.
you go all the way to the other end of the spectrum, which is a malignant narcissist, which is just like a malignant tumor. It's going to cause you problems. It might even kill you, and you have to cut it out. Gotta go. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And there can be a lot of, variations in between. But my experiences have unfortunately been with those malignant narcissists. Now, I do want to say this, though, to add this into the complexity of it. People often say, well, this person does this, and those are qualities of being a narcissist. Yeah, but if I have the sniffles and a sore throat and I go to the doctor, it could be strep throat, COVID, bronchitis. I mean, just because you have a quality does not mean you are a narcissist. Case in point, many victims of abuse, including narcissistic abuse, like me, have narcissistic qualities, but they are not. The differentiation that I make is that whether your intent is to harm another human being or not. So, for example, there are times and I am catching myself when I can be controlling for no reason other than for me knowing what to expect, making the situation safe
Mm.
makes me feel safer and more comfortable and less anxious. Does that make me a narcissist? No. Now, does it get ridiculous? Yeah. I mean, like I remember a couple months ago, my husband pulled out like a brand new package of ground beef when there was just a partially used package. And I'm like, just take the partially used one. Like, did I need to control the situation? No, it was dumb. But I don't know what I thought was a perceived threat in that situation, but it does not make me a narcissist. But now in my former marriage, you'll read, if you haven't read Gasping for Air, I talk about the rules because boy, you
Mhm.
learn the rules real quick. They make them
Mhm.
very known to you. And
Mhm.
so they are trying to control you, to isolate you, to control your thoughts, separate you from your friends and family. So they are the only one who influences you. They want your full attention. There's all these different things. So controlling for that reason versus controlling because like, okay, I just feel better if you do this is a totally different thing. So I always tell
Right.
people that the intent is where you want to look. If your
Okay.
intent is to harm another human being, I don't even care what you call it. You can call it a narcissist. You can call it an a-hole. I've often said an a-hole is an a-hole, abuse is abuse. I don't care what you call it. But just remember too, for people that don't know what narcissistic abuse is, it's not a specific type of abuse. It's just when a narcissist abuses you. And they unfortunately can use any and all forms of abuse: physical, verbal, psychological, emotional, legal, sexual, financial. I mean, they will do anything and everything. They actually very commonly use
Mm.
military wartime tactics that our military used in Guantanamo Bay on war hostages.
Oh
That
my
is
God.
not okay to do to your child or your spouse.
Oh my
So
God.
when I say malignant, these are the people that are on, whatever true crime. We like watching 48 Hours in our house. And more times than not, I'll look at my husband. He's like, that's a narcissist, isn't it? That is a
Wow.
narcissist. And actually, it's kind of crazy. I'm looking at, I always keep my statistics next to me. 38.6% of women aged 18 to 24 experience some type of their first instance of domestic violence. And what's worse, when we're talking about true crime, 38%, same percentage of all women murdered, 38% of all women murdered, and this is globally, are murdered by an intimate partner. That's a lot. That's
Yeah.
a lot.
That's
Yeah.
awful. That's awful.
But men are big and macho, aren't they? They're supposed to dominate and control, and that's why they get away with it.
Mm.
Wow, you brought up a lot of tough topics there.
Yeah.
In your memoir, many times you mentioned feeling it was possible that you could lose your life. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of threat. It's interesting because in my childhood, my stepfather, he just used his hands and they were around my neck, they were around whatever one of my scrawny limbs he could grab, banging my head against the wall, grabbing my hair by the back of my head. In my marriage, it was strange because people often assume when you say you were abused, they go straight to physical violence. When I
Yes.
went to the court to try to get an order of protection after a gun was shot multiple times,
Mhm.
and I had in writing, and he had told people he was planning to kill me, I couldn't get a restraining order. I had to go 3 times before one was granted because I didn't have bruises. I
Yeah.
didn't have any physical representation of abuse. And that's what really bothers me about all this,
Mhm.
because he didn't have to use his hands to try to kill me. For example, there's a lot that wasn't able to get in the book, but he had this really nasty knife. I'm terrified of knives. He had this really nasty knife that he would keep right next to him where he would lay on the couch, he would keep it
Mhm.
right next to him. And I always say it felt like a shock collar because it was always there as a threat to keep me in line, like a shock collar on a dog.
Yeah.
I knew that it wasn't about being weak, as people might think.
No.
It was about, I knew it was there. And if I wanted to keep some semblance of peace for me and my son, and I didn't want to die, then I kept my mouth shut and I just did whatever was going to appease him. I didn't want to poke a sleeping bear.
Mhm.
But it was really hard because when you know somebody is capable of hurting you, I mean, just by sheer size and capability, and you know that they want to hurt you and
Mhm.
they have expressed that they want you dead, there's always that fear.
Of
So,
course.
did he have to enact it? No. I mean, thank God I'm still standing, I'm still here, but how many women live that way? But then I
Yeah.
go into a court and say this, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't, what are you talking about? We don't see that you're in any danger."
Yeah.
Yet, how many times again on these true crime shows do we see
Mhm.
that these people called the cops? How many times that these people expressed to others? How many times? And
Mhm.
nothing was done. And the kicker of it all, which is the journal that I started keeping, which Gasping for Air came from, is that when I finally, it was the sixth attorney that I had talked to. I'd never pulled the trigger on divorce because I was so scared of a lot of
Yeah.
things. But the sixth attorney I talked to, I said, I'm out. I'm done. I want to be over with this. I just cannot do this anymore. And right after I talked to her, she gave me some things I had to get in order first. We went into the shelter in place for COVID. So now not only am I locked in a house with a man who wants me dead,
Mm.
I mean, I can't even leave the damn house. I mean, how scary is that? So
What
Mhm.
yeah,
was COVID like for you? It had to have been a nightmare.
well, yeah, because part of this, for those who haven't read the book, is that right before COVID, a few months before, I had been sick for about a year and a half. And I went through a long, it was an exhausting year of testing, different specialists. Come to find out that the cortisol, the stress hormone that had been running through me for so long, because of living in fight or flight for literally decades, had
Mhm.
actually made me autoimmune and gave me a lung disease that's like having COPD and fibromyalgia all at once. And I likened it when COVID came out, I thought, well, I'll never know if I have COVID because all those symptoms, I manage like musical chairs almost every day. I had had a sore throat by then for 3 years. And even
Mm.
today, if anybody hears the rasp in my voice, that's because like I'm talking and it takes more oxygen. That is just that lung disease. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life, not one. I've never done any. I used to coach cross country for 9 years. I ran 5 miles every morning and sometimes more. So this rasp is from literally the cortisol, the stress of living in that situation. So how was it? I was terrified. I was
Mm.
terrified that I was going to get COVID and die. I was terrified that this man who, like he was, and here's the thing people don't get about narcissists. Sometimes they are nice. So he
Mhm.
would do this like, oh, well, I know there's COVID and we can't leave, but why don't we take the boat out, just you and me, and reconnect out on the water? You think that after
Mm.
you threaten my life, I'm going to go out on a boat with you?
Hell no.
No, because I knew, and this was not the only example. I could give a million examples of, oh, let's just like I literally remember telling somebody that I finally reached out to, I'm worried we're going to be one of those families that ends up on the side of the road like a murder suicide where he's going to shoot me and my kid and then shoot himself because he had threatened suicide. He was
Mhm.
threatening to kill me. I'm like, I literally remember thinking it's like Survivor at this point. Like somebody's not coming out of this alive. And I wasn't sure which one of us it was going to be, but it's terrifying. So yeah, I started keeping a journal and it wasn't even a fancy journal. Like I'd love to go to Barnes and Noble and buy a beautiful leather bound book. No, I'm talking like I took something unsuspecting, like some fourth grade notebook that my son had brought home at the end of the school year that had like robots and weirdos written all over the front and all over the pages. And I was just writing on the free pages, this date, this time, 2-3 sentences. This is what happened, or this is what he said, or this is something that really bothered me. He emailed me this, whatever it was, because I thought he's going to do something to me in this house and he's going to make it look like an accident. And so I got to make sure that I have some kind of a record, because how else was I going to prove it was him? Because these people in public, there's this, I don't know what it is about people. They think like I went in the street and found Chucky and was like, hey, baby, I like your disheveled red hair and your butcher knife. Come on hither. No, no. Like even Ted Bundy was handsome and charming. You don't lure people by being a psycho. So it's not like I was attracted to that, but that's who I was married to. That's who people didn't see, was what I saw behind closed doors. Out in the world, oh my God, even in front of his own family, his own mother, his sister, my family, it was arm around me and he was loving. Oh, he would caress my cheek all the time, very sweetly. And what do? You're just like, it's a farce, it's all crap. But what do? You don't say anything. So as much as they say narcissists wear masks, guess what? So do we. So do we, because we're not trying to expose them and then have to go home and face the consequences of now somebody knows who they really are. We just deal with it.
Every time in the book where you mentioned that he was nice to you, or he would like put his arm around you or touch your face, I literally wanted to punch him in the face. every single time I wanted to punch him in the face. So you brought up your illness, and so that brings up a two-part question for me.
Okay.
And you talked about how, and you go into a lot of detail in the book about how stress really exacerbates all of that for you. And it's a long list. I mean, God, what your body has had to go through, it's awful. How did you get through writing the book? Because I imagine that's got to be stressful because you're reliving all of it.
Yes.
And then the second part of the question is, what has your healing journey looked like since leaving him, and how are you doing physically? I guess that's a three-part question. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, because I got it all. And it's beautiful because it is all interrelated. So yeah, the thing about writing the book was that, I mean, honestly, I had the degree in journalism. I had the degree in psychology, but for me, of course, he moved me 90 miles outside of the city, outside of everyone. I didn't know anyone anywhere in this small podunk town he moved us to, and he wanted it that way. I could either work at Walmart or the gas station, and he ended up having me clean houses with his best friend's wife. But, I did a kick-ass job to the point where everybody in like 3 different counties around here wanted me because I was reliable, trustworthy, and if I was going to do it, I did a damn good job. I honestly, I can clean a house, okay? But I didn't want to go home, so I took my time and I made sure that if I was out of the house and doing something, I was just going to make sure it was done good. I was in no rush to get home. But no, the healing process, kind of started in the marriage, because I think the first step to healing is wanting that healing. And what I realized when I got sick, I mean, I'll never forget the day at the end of 2019 when the doctor sat me down, because yes, what people, to understand what my body was going through, I literally, I made a spreadsheet because there were so many symptoms and there were so many doctors asking so many questions. I wanted to give them something quantitative that they could actually use, good information. But it was everything from neurological, cardiovascular, muscular, digestive, and everything in between, from numbing hands to blurred vision and blackouts to, I mean, at one point I hadn't been able to go potty for 5 weeks. Number 2, stiffening, like almost like rigor mortis if I sat for more than 10 or 15 minutes. But I was so antsy. I dropped to 93 pounds. I mean, I was skeletal and I couldn't breathe. COVID level oxygen was 93% or lower. My oxygen was going down to 83%. And when you go down that low and your heart is barely pumping, you do lose your vision, you get feverish, you are so weak. I mean, to say I was debilitating is an understatement. So when the doctor sat me down and said, whatever it is that is causing you all this stress in your life that is making you sick, you need to, it needs to go, whatever it is. I laid down that night. And the thing was, is that I mean, we all knew, it's obvious what the stress was,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't until then that I realized I was never going to get better physically, mentally, or in the scheme of life. Nothing, not a damn thing was going to get better until I was out of the situation that was making me sick. And I want people to hear this again. So I term it to others, if you want something poetic, a flower cannot bloom and grow in toxic soil, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting that towards, well, summer of 2019, my mother and stepfather cut contact with me altogether. I decided at that point, by the end of 2019, I'm done with my husband. As awful as that is, like, as much as I know people that were that read the book are like, I was cheering for you, cheering for you. But if you had to go into my heart and know what I was going through at the time, that I was physically debilitating, I was worried I was going to die. I was worried he was going to kill me if I didn't just die because I was sick. I didn't have a mom or a dad, even not a crappy one, to turn to. I wasn't going to have a husband in a second, nor all of his family, which had become mine. It was so heartbreaking. I was like mourning the death of everything
Mm-hmm.
and everybody. It was a lot. And I'm getting divorced, which just that alone, I mean, even when it's for the better of everybody, it's still hard because you're
Yeah.
mourning the death of what could have been and what you thought was, at least. I'm not sure it really was, but there was a lot. There was a
Mm-hmm.
lot there. But after the divorce, there were the 2 instances of domestic violence after the divorce. But once we got past that, and once he was gone, moved off the property, completely gone, it was weird because it's like him being out of my life, my mother being out of my life, my stepfather, all that toxicity gone almost instantly. And I mean instantly, my symptoms just went away.
Wow.
Went away. Now, I'm still, you can't reverse autoimmunity. I'm
Mm-hmm.
autoimmune. It is
Mm-hmm.
what it is. Can't take back the lung disease. It is what it is. But I don't have to use my oxygen. I had a backpack oxygen machine I had to wear with a mask that, it was unfortunate, but I had to use it every day before. I rarely use it. I've actually only used it once so far this year. And I only used it maybe a couple of, like, literally 2 times in all of that. Like,
Good.
I have gained weight back. I'm a healthy weight again. It's just amazing to me though, because there's so many people that say, but that's your family, that's your blood, at least with reference to my mother. But if somebody is making you so sick and so mentally sick
Mm-hmm.
that your body becomes sick because you're keeping it all in and it has to come out somehow, I don't care who they are. Unfortunately, sometimes it's your kid, and don't think I haven't been terrified that my son was going to become a narcissist, because dad's a narcissist, grandpa's a narcissist. Everywhere I turn, there's freaking narcissists trying to kill me or hurt me in some way. I'm like, my kid has never seen anybody else, treat me any other way. What if he becomes one? I'm glad
Yeah.
to say so far so good, and he's in a committed relationship. They're living in a house together.
Good.
So far, so good. I mean, I found out yesterday he said something I didn't like to her. She told me, and I said, boy, if you don't bop him on the head, I'm going to, because I'm Mama Bear and I'm not going to play that game. I'm not letting him do that. He is not going to get away with that. But I don't think he knows any better. And I know it's not coming from a bad place. And that's where I go back to intent. He just doesn't know any better. He'll get it though after she, has her, you know, whatever reaction she's going to have with him. But the healing part after that. So once I was, okay, gaining weight, physically better, I can literally breathe figuratively and literally. Healing was nasty.
Mm.
I think most of us think like, okay, I'm ready to heal. My fairy godmother is going to come after I've had a few therapy sessions and sprinkle magic dust on me. And when I wake up, I'm going to be riding a unicorn over a rainbow and life is just going to be wonderful after that. No, you're actually like, it's like the floors open up and you know, the demons from hell suck you down and you are literally choosing to go back to all those places and all those people and all those situations
Wow.
that you didn't have a choice to endure before. But now you're going there voluntarily and you're examining it and you're realizing things and it's nasty and awful. And of course you're going to be, I mean, you have to be mentally, it's a rough road.
Mm-hmm.
Because like writing Gasping for Air, really for me, I liked writing therapy more because talk therapy, I can't talk that much and I can't spend that much time catching up somebody on the complexity. I mean, I've written 3 books now, just the ones out, but my God, you know, I read the books, then call me, we'll have talk therapy. But for me, writing therapy was good, but writing the book was good. And that's why I always tell people journal, even if you're not trying to become a published author, journal, because writing it down, the weird thing was, and even writing Gasping for Air, I was writing about these things and really examining them. Like I'd read something and like kind of close my eyes and go back and like see everything, every picture on the wall and what were we wearing and what did I smell and what was the expression in his eyes? How was my body feeling? And I tried to express that because I think it was important for other victims to understand, like, I get it. I have been there. Like, I don't want anyone to think like they're going through it alone because it is such a surreal experience and you do doubt that you're interpreting it correctly. But the part about it is that when you're healing in whatever way you're going back, whether it's talk therapy, right? I mean, there's like goat therapy, whatever, there's all kinds of stuff now, but you're still going back there and you're still having to really delve into it. Like I always say, I have gardening references, but you know, if you've ever digging up a rose bush, oh my God, that's just like, it seems impossible because every time you think you got far enough down, there's more thorns and more roots. And you're just like, Lord, I thought I got there. Like, keep digging. And that's what it's like, because you get to a point where like, aha, I figured it out. Now I get it. And then somebody might say something, or you might, when you see those words on a page and they're outside of you and you can see them objectively. Like I remember, even to be honest with you, even the other night, I'm at the end of writing, like my prequel's been written. I'm in the end of revising and editing and whatever. And I have to add another chapter to what the publisher thinks is a finished manuscript because I had, I guess, a suppressed memory that just came up, of course, in the middle of the night, woke me up, and then I couldn't sleep. But that's what happens when you're going through this healing, is that you're like, you think you got it, and it's like, oh, crap. But then there's that. And now we got to go into that. But the beautiful thing about it is once you can understand all of it, you know, whether the other people's intentions, why they did what they did, why you responded, all the reaction, all the intricacies, I think it's, you can understand it and understand it wasn't your fault, because I think that's the biggest part of any kind of trauma or abuse is people think it's their fault. I thought everything was my fault. I was the ultimate scapegoat. And now I can look at it and say, no, actually, all that stuff these people were doing, they were basically like handing me like their big bags of potatoes to carry. It was all their unhealed trauma. They just wanted to put it on me because they didn't want to deal with it. They didn't want to go down that nasty road. They didn't want to even acknowledge that they had issues to deal with. But a narcissist never has anything wrong with them. So of course they have no issues to deal with, and they never will. And that's why they project it onto others. So that's really key for people to understand. Nothing you went through is your fault. You're not broken. You're not damaged. You're not, you know, all these things people talk about themselves with. I don't like that. Are you affected? Yeah. But, you know, I mean, I could get scratched or, you know, bruised or whatever by something, whether it's intentional or not, but it doesn't mean I'm damaged or broken. It's not, doesn't mean I'm flawed in any way. I mean, even that apple that you drop in the kitchen when you mean to eat it, you pick it up and eat it anyway, and it's still a good apple, right? You like,
That's
there's
Yeah.
right.
nothing wrong with a person that's been through some crap, and it's not your fault people did that to you. So if you can understand that and you're ready to heal, it'll be okay, but it's going to be really nasty and awful before it's okay. But then you get to the point where, like, I can stand here and talk and laugh about things that really are not funny at all, or, you know, be unaffected. I mean, even by the time Gasping for Air was published, I remember reading it for the last, my final read through, and there were things I was laughing at. And my husband, I'm remarried, he's like, "What's so funny? It's not a funny book." And I'm like, "Oh, but this," and I'm laughing about it, and it really wasn't funny. But, you know, but I'm glad that I could laugh at it. I'm glad that I could see the humor in it, because when you get to that point, that means it doesn't affect you. It doesn't cause you pain anymore.
I saw this post on your Instagram the other day about healing versus fixing,
Yes.
and healing actually being recovery. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes along with what I'm saying now, is just that,
Yeah.
you know, people have this idea. And let me say this about mental health. People think mental health means you have mental problems. No, we all have mental health like we have physical health. And
Mm-hmm.
some people like to go work out and lift weights and take steroids. And some people would rather sit on the couch, Netflix, and chill. And it's fine, whatever you choose. And your body's a reflection of what you put in your mouth and whatever activity that you exude every day. That's physical health. Mental health is the same thing. Our mental health is going to be whatever, a summation of whatever experiences we've been through and whatever we do with that. Some people meditate, some do not. Some go to therapy, some do not. But we're also willing to, you know, take jogs and lift weights for our physical muscles. But what do we ever do? Does anybody ever stop? I mean, I know some people, you know, whether you do yoga or meditations or therapy, whatever it is, what do we do for our mental health? But just because you have mental health doesn't, I mean, we all have it. You don't have mental problems. And I think that's where I was going with that, is that I get
Hmm.
so tired of people, even the verbiage in this realm is so off to make people think something is wrong with them because they have depression, because they're hyper vigilant, because they have anxiety, because they have triggers that dysregulate them and make them panicky and sweaty. And guess what? I do too. And I've learned to self regulate. That's part of healing. And it takes effort, very concerted, disciplined effort. But you
Mm-hmm.
can get to a point where you rewire your brain. And the other part of this that I want to address on that is that part of healing is also chemical. There are people don't understand too. This kind of plays into, why do people stay in situations like, well, there's a million reasons people stay
Mm-hmm.
in relationships that have nothing to do with the relationship, financial, family, whatever. But when you have come from a situation like my cortisol can actually be transferred from a mother to a baby. Did we know that? So
I
now
did not.
that baby can be addicted to cortisol. It's just like if I was a crack whore giving birth to a baby, now I got a baby addicted to crack. Guess what? Same thing with cortisol. And even me, even take the baby out of it. Why did I end up in a situation with a guy that was like that, treating me like that? Because my body was used to the cortisol rush. I dated a nice guy here and there. I didn't know what the hell to do with that. You're nice to me, you're opening doors, and there's no conflict. I mean, honestly, even with my current husband, he's like the gentlest, sweetest thing ever. And I so need that. But even in the beginning, while I'm going through my healing and all my stuff, I mean, I remember this poor man, it's always us and food because he's an eater, he's a big boy. But it was over a bottle of ketchup was our first argument. And you know why? Because everything was too good. And I didn't trust when things were too good. I didn't trust that everything was just freaking fine. Something had to go wrong. And it's like, I'm realizing now, like, I needed to stir stuff up to have
Mm.
that chaos to get my cortisol rush. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like, you know, that crackhead that's like, doesn't, you know, they're desperate to get their fix. I needed my cortisol fix. So I started an argument with this poor man over a bottle of ketchup. I swear, this man will never buy beef or ketchup again. But he leaned his arm against the wall and just put his hand on his hip, and he just looked at me with a sweet smirk on his face. And when I was done, I mean, I kept going because I'm like, I'm gonna get a reaction. I gotta provoke him. I'm gonna, you know, I need this rush. I need to butt heads. He wouldn't give it to me. When I was done and I finally just like fizzled out, I remember I felt like a toddler, like, you know, wanted to stop my feet. And he's like, "Are you done?" And I'm like, and he put his arm around me. We went in with the ketchup, by the way, and the food was really good. I think we were grilling burgers that day. But that's the thing about it. It seems stupid, and people say, "Oh, it's immature. You have mental health problems." No, I'm trying to get through some crap, and I'm okay
Mhm.
now. I'm a little crazy here and there, but you know what? Little
Yeah, we
crazy is
all are.
good. It spices things up. It does. But we all have something, and even the people that don't think they do and feel like they have perfect lives, there's stuff there. Whether you want to delve into that is your business, but certainly you can't make somebody, just like you can't make somebody leave a toxic relationship. You can't make an alcoholic just stop drinking because it's the best thing for their health. You can't tell a crackhead to love their baby more than the crack. It just doesn't work that way. They got to come to terms on it on their own. And when they're ready, they will. And if they're capable and really want it that bad, then they'll do it just like the rest of us. So, you know, it's definitely a happy ending, but yeah, physically, my body is still triggered by stress. But fortunately, I live a very peaceful life now. It has taken me over 3 years for my nervous system to settle so that I could sleep most of the night, because
Wow.
I couldn't even sleep, to the point where I had lost so much sleep that, I mean, my head was hurting, my eyes were hurting. I would just wake up. Well, I shouldn't even say wake up. I would get out of bed in the morning and just cry because everything hurt so bad. And I was so, I tried so many over the counter and prescription sleeping aids, I guess they call them, and they wouldn't even help. Multiple of
Mm.
them at a time, and it wouldn't help. So it takes some time, but it is possible. I mean, I'm standing here and life is good and I'm smiling and I'm healthy mentally and physically. We're lifting the weights every day in our brain and in our body, but it's good. But you have to choose that, and you have to want
Mhm.
it for yourself.
Right. How's your son doing?
Amazing. And I'm saying that, I feel stupid saying that, like, you know, look at us, life is just, you know, it is sunshine and rainbows, because I feel like I think even I expected like something was going to happen, because
Mhm.
I know part of that is in Gasping for Air, where my
Yeah.
ex was like, "Oh, well, you know, kids of divorce go, you know, have problems with drugs and alcohol." And he was basically, and there were other times, even not just what's in the book, where he basically told me he was going to ensure our son was going to go that route. But I always stand by this. I never said anything to my son, even to this day. I mean, anytime he's ever come to me and said, "Well, dad said this," or "I heard that," I'm like, you know what? Believe what you want, but I'm going to stand by, I'm your mother. You know who's been consistent and stable and the one constant in your life. And I am just sitting here living my life, not bothering anyone else, not saying anything about anyone else. But I'm like, certain things aren't your business. I mean, he will never read that book. And I'm glad for it. He doesn't need to read
Okay.
that book. He
Right.
doesn't need to know all that stuff. And he has enough respect for me to respect my privacy in this weird way because it is so public. But I don't share that stuff with him. He doesn't even want to know about my past with my
Mhm.
parents, and that's fine. Our relationship is mine and his, but he is good. I was sure that there would be some mental scars there, and I'm sure there are. Has he exhibited them? No. No. I mean, he has a very healthy social life. He has so many friends. Everybody loves him. He's like the teacher's pet at work. He ended up graduating high school, went on to diesel school in Wyoming, got 5 job offers before he even graduated, took the job he wanted. He got paid way too much money for 19 years old, but was able to buy his first house at 19 years old with no
Wow.
help from mama, no help from anybody, all on his own. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm using all these like tangible things to say that he's doing well, but this is somebody who it had to unfortunately mature faster than his
Yeah.
age, but he's responsible, he's hardworking. It's funny, he even sent me a TikTok the other day but it's so him, talking about how, oh, does your son smoke? No. Does your son drink? No. And he doesn't. He's been a great kid. So can he be snarky? Yeah, he's going to be 21 in a couple months. Of course he's snarky once in a while, but he's my snarky boy, so I still love him, but he's doing fabulous.
That's
Good.
great.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, me too.
Was there anything that you wanted to let our audience know that we didn't ask you about?
Guys were pretty thorough. I think it's interesting. One person asked me a few weeks ago, and I realized nobody had ever asked me this. People often talk about how maybe they miss this person that was so horrible to them. And I was asked, do you ever
Yeah.
miss him? And it was really weird, but I mean, yeah, I can't say I don't, but I don't know that I miss him. I think I
Mhm.
miss what he showed me he could be
Mm.
and what I hoped would be.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's real. And that's what makes me sad about it. So it's kind of a weird yes, but I want people to know my answer because I think that if there is anybody out there that can relate, like, yeah, I've been out of it for 3.5 years, but you know what? Of course, this jackass moved 7 miles from me on purpose. Yeah, on purpose. He has no business even being out in this area anymore, but
Oh,
I have to pass by his house sometimes. I sometimes pass on the main road by him. Every once in a while, there's like that regret that I feel, but I remind myself, and this is part of why I kept that notebook. I still have the notebook that Gasping for Air came from, and sometimes I look in it. There's stuff, like I said, that didn't make it in the book, and I'm like, how could I forget that that happened? That was
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
horrific. How could I forget that he said that? And when I read that and all that, I remind myself, this is why you're not with him. So, like I said, I think it's more of a regret or what I miss is what I thought and hoped it could be and would be, but not necessarily what it was.
Yeah.
Mm.
A grief over the possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Beautifully put.
Thank you.
Dana, I'm so glad that you're doing better and that you're
Thank you.
healing, and you you look like you're just glowing, and I can hear the strength in your voice when you're talking about all this. So
Thank you.
I'm really, really happy that your life has done a complete 180, and that you have the strength in yourself, and you have a great son, and you have a
Yeah,
great husband who treats you
he
the
does.
way that you should be treated.
It's like
So,
Princess and the Pea around here. And I
mhm,
love that my son has been able to see a man, a very manly man,
mhm.
treat me like a delicate, fragile flower. Although I remind my husband, I love being a delicate, fragile flower, but she will still punch you in the nose. I ain't taking no crap anymore. And I'm a
That's
foot
great.
shorter and 120 pounds lighter, but boy, don't think.
I love
Yeah,
that.
that's fantastic.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Dana, I wish you all the best, and the book is so wow. I mean, you definitely show your vulnerability in the book, and
Thank you.
thank you for going through that whole process of writing the book, and just and sharing your story with people, and now showing that you can
Yes.
come out the other side,
Yes.
and life is great. So
Yes.
I'm really happy for you.
Thank you so much. And thank you guys for having me. And just real quick, if there is anybody out there listening that knows somebody that might be in a situation, please don't confront them. They know the situation they're in, but maybe share this podcast, share the link, and just say, hey, this was really interesting. You might want to listen, because coming from somebody else, something might resonate and make them rethink what they're going through.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Oh, you
That-
want to recap?
Yeah, we all have shit that we're dealing with, right? And we talked on the show about how so often we repress it or we ignore it or we run from it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And sweet Jesus, Dana did exactly the opposite. She like went through all of this to write this book so that somebody else might see it and get something out of it. That
She's
is
a
so
badass.
yeah, and it's so admirable. And she's continuing to do that for her own healing. I mean, that's huge. That is huge. I have so much respect for that. That's amazing.
Awesome. There's a couple things I want to say. Dana dedicated her book to her grandmother, who also withstood spousal abuse.
Mhm,
So her grandmother, her mother, her,
mhm.
generational,
Yeah.
right? And then she talked about the cortisol that a baby is born with, and sort of like, I don't know if she used these words, I'm paraphrasing, the addiction to cortisol.
Yeah.
I know that shit is real.
Mhm,
I know that that is real. I have seen that in my own
Mhm.
family. I really think it's important for people to understand and to look like, okay, you look at Dana, you look at her in the face. She is a strong, educated, dare I say, feisty, beautiful
Mhm.
woman.
Mhm.
And you would say, there's no man that's going to take advantage of her. But the narcissistic abuse
Yeah.
can be
It's so insidious.
so insidious. That's exactly the word I was looking for. So insidious because it's the typical abuse cycle. It's like there's so much love, but then there's the violence or the threat of violence or the verbal abuse or the knife that's
Yeah.
replaced. But then there's love. But then there's the
Then
and
there's
then
all the
there's
put downs.
love.
Yeah.
And then the something's wrong with you. You're damaged. No one else will love you. Don't believe those people. I'll take you to the country. I'll keep you away from everyone you know. I actually dated a narcissist for about 2 years.
Mm.
He's the only man that has ever lived in my home since my divorce.
Oh.
And it took me a while to realize it. And it was the most afraid of a man I've ever been in my life. And one of the things that I remember so much about that is all the things he planted in my head
Mhm.
about, I was the manager at work. He would
Mhm.
tell me, those people don't like you. They're being nice to you because they have to. They don't actually like you. They hate you. They would stab you in the back so quickly, stuff like that.
Yeah.
The control around, I would come downstairs dressed up to go somewhere. Oh, I like, what do you wear? Oh, why are you wearing those shoes? Don't wear those shoes. Go put high heels on. Just like,
Yeah.
but
Chipping away, chipping
chip,
away.
chipping away, chipping away, chipping away, chipping away. And I knew it in my gut.
Mhm.
And I was ready to, I mean, I wasn't nearly in as long as a relationship as Dana was, but I was ready to end it probably 6 months prior to when I did. Because the
Mhm.
first time I tried to end it, he paced back in front of my house
Oh
smoking
God.
cigarettes all night long. So I finally said, okay, never mind. Come
Yep.
inside. And he
Mhm.
said, good, because I didn't want to have to burn your house down.
Oh God.
And then the next day it's like, oh baby, I love you so much. Oh,
Right.
baby.
Right.
And I'm a strong, independent woman who owns my own home, was a manager, have my own children, but it's this insidiousness that
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's easy to fall for, but it's kind of like
Well,
easy.
it's the skill that they have
Bingo,
in
bingo, bingo,
turning
bingo,
things around and twisting things.
bingo.
It's not that there's anything wrong with the person that this is happening to. It's not that they have some flaw or deficiency or what. It's not that. It's this that these abusers
Are
are
really good
so
at it.
skilled at controlling a situation and twisting it.
Yeah.
It's so easy in our society to go, oh, why didn't so and so just leave? Why didn't so and so do this? How did so and so let that happen? Stop blaming the victim. Nobody goes, oh, well, that motherfucker is very skilled at being a jackass.
Yes, that is what we need to say and call out.
Yeah.
Yes.
As a society, we need to learn how to talk about this, how to be there for people when they are going through something like this and when they come out of something like this, because re-entering society, and that's exactly what it is because they've been isolated for so long.
Yeah.
Re-entering society there's a whole process that goes with that. I'm so glad that Dana is writing a sequel because I'm hoping that the sequel will cover that, will cover the, coming back to yourself or discovering yourself or just figuring
Oh.
out how to live your life without that shit.
I heard her talking on another podcast that she was interviewed on. I don't remember which one, so I'm sorry, podcasters world out there. I should have written it down. I heard her talking about coming out of it, just asking herself simple questions about what do I like? Like
Yep.
he had so many rules for her around, what she could cook, what she could wear, what lipstick she could have on. So when she was cooking for herself, she was like, I don't have to follow the rules. What do I like? And I heard her say, and I thought this was the greatest. She said, I thought I might like some butter pecan ice cream for dinner. And I was
There
like,
you go.
yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
because just having a little bit of yourself back for a while to say, what is it that I want? What can I do? It's such a
Mhm.
beautiful thing. And you're right, Raquel. We need to be more community focused on how you notice something that doesn't seem right with your neighbor. Maybe you do share this episode of this podcast, or,
Mhm.
just maybe you say, do you want me to bake you a loaf of bread? Would you like to come over for tea? Would you like to
Mhm.
take a walk around the neighborhood? Anything to give someone some outside companionship.
Yeah. Yeah, like her neighbor, Stacy, who after, what was it, like 3 years, Stacy was like, "Of course I'm gonna go to court with you."
Yeah.
You know?
Thank you, Stacy. Stacy,
Yes.
you rock.
Stacy's awesome. Stacy's a badass.
Stacy was
Stacy's a
also
badass.
Dana's a badass and Stacy's a
Yep,
badass.
absolutely. Yeah, people read the book. Yeah, I mean, it boggles the mind everything that Dana endured and where she is now. It is definitely a huge 180. So, like I said, I'm so happy for Dana. Read the book. It's a long book, but it's a good read. Don't let that stop you.
And you got to read it so you can get ready for the prequel and the sequel.
Yes. Oh, I can't wait.
Bye, Raquel.
Bye, Jennifer. Thanks everyone for listening today. We will be back with more Madness Cafe next week. You can find us on Instagram at Madness Cafe Podcast or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com. Bye.